the announcement
Hi, Jared.
about the lyric.
Let me text Fullcaster.
He just came on, Howard.
Okay, good. We have a call.
All right. So are we ready? Randy, everything's ready?
Samuel.
Yes, we are. You're live on YouTube, yes.
We are, okay. I can barely hear you.
We go ahead and get the meeting started. Was the applicant planning on joining us, or?
Yeah, the applicant is, said he was gonna join us.
Right, this is Janet. I'm on the
Why don't
phone.
we just start? We could go over the minutes.
Yeah, let's at least start doing that. So, with the time being 6:33 p.m.,
He can't hear me.
call the meeting to order. Public notice was given that the planning commission was be holding a meeting remotely this evening on Thursday, April 8th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. as permitted by Executive Order 2020-07, which was signed by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on Monday, March 16, 2020, in response to COVID-19 pandemic. Members that were of public that were wishing to participate in this meeting remotely were able to do so by downloading the Zoom app or calling in to the number. Order of business is roll call. Chair Patoska's here.
Eric Fullcaster here. Jay Weir here.
Tony Ebling here.
Janet,
There being 4 members present, we have a quorum. Next order of business is public
Hello?
comment. However, was there any public comment submitted on this application?
one
No
moment.
public.
So we had a quorum at the planning commission. We had 4
Plan
people.
minutes for the meeting held on March 4th, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion.
Second. Any changes, corrections, or anything like that? All right, great. All in favor,
Hold on.
Howard, can you help us with what's happening here, please?
I'm not sure. Randy?
Hi, this is Janet.
04-2410.
Howard?
This should be the old,
I keep hearing the planning commission in the background.
One moment. Let me mute the.
Actually, ordinance 99-256, which goes into details whenever.
Okay. Hi, Miguel, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Waiting.
So before we start the meeting, the planning commission had a quorum. They approved the minutes and they also approved the auto repair facility. I had to represent both Janet and Miguel because there was no one there. They approved it with conditions, which I could discuss it later on when your application is being heard. But the first application is going to be the Lyric Theater.
Okay,
Okay.
got it. So should we start the meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Randy, are you there? Is it already live?
Yeah, oh, it's been live since 7:30. Yeah, Ben did
Okay.
that.
All right. So 7:35.
Okay. If I could just ask everybody to maybe put your microphones on mute for any background noise. If there happens to be any, we greatly appreciate it. Okay, so the public notice of the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing to be held remotely on Thursday, April 8th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. as permitted by Executive Order 2020-07, which was signed by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on Monday, March 16th, 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. To participate remotely, download the Zoom Cloud Meetings app, then click the link. The ID is 841-5337-3174. Password is 755216, or call 312-626-6799, or tune into the youtube.com/user/Blue Island Television for the Blue Island Television version. Can we get a roll call, please? Sam Jones?
Here.
Ron Bloom?
Present.
Mike Sinde?
Here.
And Kimberly Byrne. Attendees, Howard Kapari is here.
Yes.
We have some guests also. Participants, Ms. Amanda Goretto. Do I see Amanda? Amanda, I see you there. Amanda Goretto Melvin for the Lyric Theater, and Miguel Castillo and or Janet Davis for CMR Auto Services. Can you identify yourself, please? Amanda? Can you please say you're here?
Yes, I'm here. Amanda Goretto.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Miguel Castillo or Janet Davis?
This is Miguel Castillo. I'm here.
And
Okay.
Janet.
Thank you very much. Okay, first line of business is public comment. Howard, did you receive any public comment?
I did not receive any public comments.
Okay. We have a quorum, by the way, and the meeting started at 7:35. Okay, old business is to review and approve the ZBA minutes for March 4th, 2021. Do I have a motion for approval?
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
Who's the second?
Mike Cindy.
Thank you. Okay, new business. Chairman's comments. Appreciate everyone being here. It was wasn't sure how this meeting was going to go. Initially, it was there wasn't maybe enough people for the planning committee to approve to review the Lyric Theater application. So that's why we're a little kind of confused, because we were earlier told that the Lyric was potentially may have to be postponed. So we will discuss that tonight. Wanted to thank. Yes, go ahead.
So again, the Planning Commission heard CMR auto repair because under the C1 planning and zoning reviews of special use, since the Lyric Theater falls under the UTOD, only the zoning review it. So there was no discussion about the Lyric Theater at the Planning Commission.
Okay.
And it's notated in the meeting notice, and it was advertised in the newspaper. I was very careful. I said, per the UTOD ordinance, only the zoning board will review the special use for the Lyric Theater, while the other one was per the regular zoning code.
Got it. Okay. Well, why don't we just go ahead and begin number 2 on the under new business. Howard?
So what's number 2?
UTD ordinance for the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Lyric Theater.
So per the UTOD ordinance, the Zoning Board of Appeals will review the applicant's request for a special use to allow for a movie live theater indoor use in the Uptown Transit Oriented Development District, commonly known as the UTOD. The applicant will provide for complimentary shuttle service to transport patrons to remote public-private parking lots as part of a voluntary parking plan. So that's the official notice that went in the newspaper. So I could talk about it, or if you want Amanda to discuss more about it, it's up to the chair. Want me to discuss it first?
How about Amanda? Why don't you present the idea, the interest, and then Howard can kind of then go into the requirements and then the fulfillment of those requirements.
Okay, so Howard did tell me I could do a screen share. Is that possible? I have like a
Andy?
few slides put together.
Yeah, you should have the green button at the very
I
bottom
do.
screen. Okay, click on it,
Okay,
and then we'll all be looking at the same document.
okay. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Amanda Goretto Melvin, and I am representing the Lyric Theater in our request for a special use for an indoor movie and live theater. Howard said that I could start by giving a quick history on the property. The Lyric Theater was originally opened in 1917 and operated until 1960 when a fire destroyed the theater. It reopened in 1962, eventually closing in the late 1980s. You turn that sound off, I'm sorry. Since then, there have been several attempts to bring the theater back, but for the last almost 20 years, it has sat unused. We bought this property about 6 months before the pandemic hit, and during the time prior to that purchase, we saw the Metro South Hospital close and saw other businesses starting to follow suit and leave town. My dad, my Uncle Ray, and I decided that we needed to take action and began our pursuit to purchase the theater. This theater holds sentimental value to a lot of people in Blue Island, as well as to myself and my family. My grandma, Janet Goretto, just celebrated her 89th birthday. Growing up, she would tell me about her first job selling movie tickets in a ticket booth at the Lyric Theater, and how that is where she first met her husband, her future husband, my grandfather. We can't wait for the day that we can tell her that we are officially bringing the Lyric Theater back to Uptown Blue Island. Our primary use for the Lyric Theater will be a movie theater with a modern take. We plan to show older movies and recent releases with non-traditional movie theater seating. This will enable our guests to enjoy the featured film while also enjoying drinks, snacks, and dinner. The movies will be shown with our state-of-the-art AV system, which includes a large screen with a new projector, enhanced audio theater, lighting, and additional TVs. We will have 3 seating levels and 2 balcony suites that will overlook the theater. The first level will have a small bar that can seat about 15 people and fixed seating. The second and third level will have a customizable seating that can be changed based on the event's needs. This will allow for the space to be transformed and customized by event. As a secondary, we are also going to have a live theater and entertainment. The Lyric Theater stage, lighting, state-of-the-art AV system and layout will allow us to host a variety of events, including our own, as well as private and semi-private events. Some of the events we anticipate hosting would be dinner and a movie, live bands, youth events, workshops, dance nights like Latin music, country music, vendor nights, immersive movies, comedy, magic, and variety shows, and seasonal shows. Some of the events we anticipate for private and semi-private events would include weddings, galas, benefits, fundraisers, corporate events, award ceremonies, performing arts, and showers. We do not plan to have a full service kitchen. We're going to have a prep kitchen. So for our food and drinks, we're going to feature Taste of Blue Island. In revitalizing the theater with a modern take, one of our main objectives is to bring more business to Blue Island and local businesses. So a focus throughout our events will be to showcase other businesses in town and their products and services. For example, dinner and food will feature local caterers, restaurants, and bakeries, as well as guest chefs. And drinks will feature local breweries, wineries, and liquor. In bringing a business back to life after almost 20 years, we understand that the parking is a concern and have made a concerted effort to address this. We will be providing all events with detailed information on available parking with maps. And the parking lot that's attached to our building has approximately 80 spots and is anticipated to be the primary parking lot. We are also currently in discussions with VS USA to lease additional parking spaces at the parking lot located directly across from our building. We will also encourage public transit and ride sharing. So we do have an overflow parking plan for when an event is anticipated to have a greater number of guests. During these events, we will provide a shuttle service to our guests as well as detailed maps on where the shuttle will pick up and drop off. We will be doing considerable renovations in the interior of the building as well as minor renovations on the exterior. All renovations will have an emphasis on maintaining the character of the building while bringing the building up to current codes and standards, making sure to follow the UTAD and city guidelines. We look forward to bringing the Lyric Theater back to Uptown Blue Island. Thank you for your time and consideration. So that's what I have.
Thank you.
So
Howard,
continue.
go ahead.
All right. So the applicant here is applying for a special use application to reestablish the movie theater / live theater under the UTOD, which is a special use under this zone. As Amanda mentioned, the history, this original building was built pretty much occupying the whole property, so there's no parking spaces on site provided. It's what we would call a legacy building. The neighborhood where this theater is located is mixed use in character. You have residential and commercial. The existing Lyric Theater is 2 stories in height, and its footprint is 60 feet in width and 148 in length, pretty much plus or minus 8,968 square feet for the footprint of the building. Now, per the UTOD, the zoning board has the responsibility to review the special use application from Lyric Venture LLC. As I mentioned earlier, the UTOD is kind of a standalone zone, and they have particular requirements which entity reviews it. Under regular zoning, planning and zoning would have reviewed it, but under the UTOD, only the Zoning Board of Appeals reviews special use applications. So that's the reason why only one board is hearing it versus the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Again, the particular special use, the official title is Movie Live Indoor Theater. That's the zoning use. As Amanda mentioned, this is going to be multi-use in space. There's going to be 3 seating levels and 2 balcony suites. They're going to be providing drinks, snacks, and dinner. And then also the uses that Amanda mentioned are also referred in my staff report. So I'm not going to go into that. The theater will be predominantly operating from Thursday through Sunday, and it will start in the late afternoon and go on to the late evening. When it comes to this, they're providing for a proactive mitigation plan that deals with parking. They are aware that this is a use that's going to bring people. It's going to bring people for several hours. So they provided us with a parking mitigation plan, which is part of the documents that was submitted in conjunction with the staff report, which everybody received and which Amanda also received as part of my email, the email that was sent to her. Now, as Amanda explained, they're going to be providing for possibly 7 places to park vehicles. The first one was mentioned is the public parking lot that's located between High Street and York, directly behind the movie theater. This is the parking lot that's also, you have the public library that's across the street, and you have Moraine Valley Community College. The Lyric Theater would like to use a good portion of this parking lot for smaller events or events that won't trigger, let's say, the shuttle bus service. So that would be the first one. The second would be the Metro lot, which here in my staff report is located at 1311 Irving Avenue. This is either a first or last resort, and it's going to be providing for another 40 parking spaces. Why I mentioned first resort, because if people are coming for a special movie venue or special movie weekend, they could take Metra and come to the city by train, public transportation, and then there'll be a courtesy shuttle bus that takes them to the actual building. So that's the first resort. Last resort would be if they have a lot of people attending the movie theater, then they could provide that as a backup overflow parking. So then the other four are private lots that are owned by Lyric Venture. The first one is the property on 12720 Southwestern Avenue, which used to be the Burr Oak TV, which can accommodate for another 8 parking spaces. Then the other private parking lot that could be provided is 2427 Burr Oak Avenue, which used to be the former nursing home, which can accommodate for another 25 parking spaces. The third one is 12704 Western Avenue, which is the current Famous Cut Barber Shop, which can accommodate for another 18 parking spots. And then the last one out of the private lots will be the parking lot at 12660 Southwestern Avenue, the current Beggar's Pizza, which can accommodate for another 20 parking spaces, right? And then the final one is what Amanda mentioned. They are hopefully in negotiation in trying to secure at least parking spaces for VS USA. That group is still going through the mitigation process. They're going through a traffic and parking analysis. So there might be a holdover why they haven't allowed for the Lyric Venture Group to use their parking. But that's the 7th one. So in reality, you have 7 lots. Some are public, some are private. In my report, I mentioned the parking number, which I'll go into details when I go over these sections, why a parking variance is not required. Just keep in mind, they're probably going to be providing for a grand total of 287 parking spaces. And this is the parking spaces for the parking lot that's directly behind their building, the 4 private parking lots that they own. And then the other one is the Metro lot. And just to look over here, the Lyric Theater would like to use probably at least 80 parking spaces from the public parking lot that's directly behind them. So that's where we get the number 287 that they'll be able to provide for mitigation. They're willing to work with the community. If other people are using the public parking lot, they'll execute using the other private lots and the Metro lot, and hopefully by then they'll also have the parking spaces at VS USA. VS USA could probably provide for another 96 parking spaces, especially for the evening. That's the parking lot that they have for the Pavilion 5-story building, that tall, slender building that's across from St. Benedict's. Now I'm going to go into the reason why a parking variance is not required. So there are 2 sections that I'm going to quote. Section 5.81, B as in boy, scope of regulation. I'll read it. When the intensity of the use of any building, structure, or premises shall be increased through addition of dwelling units, gross floor area, seating capacity, or other units of measurement specified herein for the required or loading facilities as required herein shall be provided for such an increase of intensity of use. So again, the catchword here is they're not going to expand their physical building. They're just going to be modifying their seating. So we're going to look at seating capacity for this section, right? So basically the movie theater will not expand in a physical manner, and this movie theater will also not increase the zoning density. In reaction, they're going to be minimizing the seating capacity that the old theater had versus the new. So getting to this point, as Amanda, the applicant, explained to me, that the old movie theater, before they pulled out the seats, before the movie theater building was sold, there were plus or minus 350 seats that were fixed, right? And if we look at today's parking calculation, 4 seats well, four seats for every parking space, that would require 87.5 parking spaces. However, like I mentioned in my staff report, the applicant intends to provide for permanent and movable seats, which will total about 212 seats. So from 350, we have gone down to 212. Or a parking use, again, 4 seats per parking space, 53 parking spaces. So again, the number that I quoted in the beginning, 287 parking spaces that they're providing to provide for their patrons, either public or private lots, versus the reality of, in reality, they might have to only provide for 53 parking spaces. So like I finished in this paragraph in the staff report, this is not going to generate a parking variance because they're not increasing the density, but they're decreasing the density and the seating capacity. The second section, section 5.81, C as in cat, scope of regulation goes into this. Whenever the existing use of a building or structure shall hereafter be changed to a new use, parking or loading facility shall be provided as required for such a new use. However, if the said building structure was erected prior to an effective date of this comprehensive amendment, additional parking and loading facilities are mandatory only in the amount which the requirements of the new use would exceed those of the existing use, if the latter were subject to a parking loading provision of the comprehensive plan. To summarize that, basically, if the movie theater went to a higher density, then the parking requirements would kick in. But again, the applicant is trying to reestablish a use that existed since 1917, intermittent to today's date, with a similar use, the movie theater plus the live theater. So per this requirement, they are not changing the use. And by not changing the use, it's going to be a similar use. They're just going through the special use just to document the process. Parking is not required once again. So a parking variance will not be required. To summarize in this, I go that this existing building, which was built in 1917, never provided for any on-site parking. So people probably parked on the streets back then if these people had vehicles. So much this building is grandfather, and its non-existing parking spaces are not being increased in a theoretical manner, but being decreased. Again, the no new physical parking spaces will be required for this movie theater for section 5.81 C as in cat, because the use is the same. It's a wash, movie theater to movie theater. So then I go on to say that they're making every effort to provide a sound and cost-effective way to mitigate the parking and to reestablish a movie theater and to revitalize that area, Western Avenue, especially in the uptown area. In my staff report, I mentioned that the zoning board will most likely ask for the applicant to come back in 6 months after a certificate of occupancy has been issued by the building department, just to review the parking issue and to modify anything that might need to be improved upon in a voluntary manner. I close off to say in the staff report that, you know, this is a building that's very important to the character of Blue Island, and reestablishing is going to be a positive, a win-win for most of the businesses there, because there will be more people coming in. And then I go over the special use standards, which Amanda and we worked on, which for documentation purposes for the state of Illinois, we have to show that we looked at different criteria. It's not going to be detrimental to the neighborhood. They're going to increase and make better public health, safety, morals. The special use will not diminish or impair property values, but on the opposite, it's going to probably increase property values surrounding it. That the special use will not impede the normal or orderly development or improvement of the surrounding properties. This building is a legacy building. It's not being physically expanded. The seats have been reduced. It's a building that had no parking. They're providing for a very ambitious parking mitigation plan off-site, providing with a shuttle service. Adequate utilities, access road, drainage, or necessary facilities have been or being provided. They're going to use the existing facilities. They're not asking for anything new. Another requirement under the standards, will they provide for proper ingress and egress and to minimize traffic? At this point, again, there's no physical parking on the building. Most of their activities will fall on Thursday through Sunday, so it's going to be late weekday, early weekend. It's going to be in the evening hours. So the public parking lot that they share with the public library and the community college should work out, because the library and the community college will probably finish off with their classes and the library, and then the parking lot will be vacant for the use of the movie theater, especially in the evening. And then finally, the final standard for this is, does it comply with the comprehensive plan? Does it meet the recommendation of the zoning board, zoning board of appeals, which can then be forwarded to the city council? And the answer is yes. This is a part of the city that needs reinvestment, and this building has been sitting there idle for almost 20 years. And by reestablishing the movie theater and being creative and trying to bring other special events, they're going to bring people, and they're going to bring in business through Western Avenue and the uptown area. Then I mentioned conditions and guarantee, which is always required, that the city council can always put additional conditions if they need it. Under additional staff recommendation, the only thing I ask for is that the trash dumpsters should be located away from the alleyway. It should be inside the building, or there should be a portion of the rear part of the building that should be indented to have the trash dumpster, and it has to be properly screened. And then the second condition is, to reappear in front of the zoning board of appeals in 6 months for the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, right? After they get their certificate of occupancy, they will operate their business for 6 months. If the business is having problems, they'll come back to the ZBA and we'll look at trying to mitigate the parking. One other note under additional staff recommendation, Amanda is aware that a valet parking application will need to be submitted, but this will be done internally during the business license application process. And the rest of the staff report shows pictures of the exterior, interior, and the seating. How the movie theater is going to have seating that are either movable and fixed. And that's that with this staff report.
Okay, are you concluded?
Yes, I've concluded. I've run out of voice.
Amanda, Greta, do you have any other comments or response to what Howard talked about?
No, I don't think so.
Great. Does the committee have any questions?
This is Ron. First,
Bloom?
yes, I'm sorry. First, I want to compliment all those that were involved in pulling this package together, all the preparatory work. Howard working with you, pulling together the staff report. I thought it was very complete. Certainly focused on one of the key areas that we've been talking a lot about, and that's parking, and making sure that is covered. Amanda, thank you for the opening overview. I thought that was very well done. Personally, I think it's a very exciting project, to move to fruition. With the different uses of the venue as detailed, maybe I missed it in here, but you've got such a variety of uses beyond movie, particularly where you're going to have events, parties, or receptions of some type. Can you just comment a little bit on thoughts of security and how some of that may be handled?
Yes, absolutely. So we do, figure out how to turn that on. So we do plan to primarily do movies. So the other will be kind of a secondary. And we currently utilize security at our Beggar's Pizza locations in both on the Western Avenue and the Kedzie location. And we work with the Blue Island Police to provide security, and we would plan to do the same thing there.
Okay, good. For me, those are the only questions, other than perhaps at some point someone can enlighten me as to what an immersive movie is.
I actually can tell you what that is. So, for example, if you have a movie that we can make a whole theme on the movie. So it's kind of like, you know, the decor will be towards the movie, the food and the drinks will be themed towards the movie. So it's kind of more of an immersive experience where it's all themed to that movie and kind of makes you feel like you're in a different time and place.
Okay. Well, that's,
So an example would be like a Back to the Future movie theme. They'll probably show all three movies, and they'll probably have the DeLorean there, and they'll have food from the 80s.
Oh, I
People will
see.
dress in the 80s character, or something like Beetlejuice, right? For Halloween. So they might show Beetlejuice, and they might have the characters out there. Beetlejuice, you know, scaring off the kids at the movie theater.
Gotcha. Very good. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
That's
I'd
all
like
I
to compliment the application and the report by Howard. This is one of the most complete applications we had in a long time in terms of the thought process.
Hey, Howard, this
And
is Steve Jones. I think too.
Most importantly, well, this is something that can spur development along Western Avenue. You know, using this as kind of an anchor along that area of Western Avenue and kind of spurring other development, whether it be restaurants, other businesses, et cetera. So I want to thank them for coming forward with this application. Value of the building and historic value of that sign maybe up in front. I know that's not the original sign in front of the building, but is there something that can be done? I know there's funding for the signage in front, just to kind of, but once again, thank you for the application. It's amazing, and I think it's something that'll help.
Michael, you're cutting in and out. Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sam,
Thank you, Mike.
Jones,
And
did you have a comment?
Yes.
I did kind of
Okay.
miss what he was saying, but I know he mentioned something about the sign, and we definitely have that in plans to try to keep it as much intact as we can, but to also, you know, bring it up to code and safety standards, and to kind of stay true to that. We also don't know which one is the original sign. We found a few, like 4 different variations. So we're going to go with the one that we have and try to, you know, keep it as close to that as possible while freshening it up, because it definitely needs a little bit of a facelift. And thank you so much, Mike, for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Howard and Matt, I have a quick question.
Sam Jones,
Yes, ma'am.
go ahead.
Diagram too. The diagram is really, really great. I got to give it to you on that. But one thing I'm wondering about, maybe I missed it in there, was when they were talking about overflow, that might address that wonderful stuff we experienced like December through February. Would that be an obstruction to some degree?
I'm sorry, it cut out a little bit. I missed part of that.
I think I'm looking for example, with the parking, would snow removal be a hindrance to some degree, or is there a contingency in place to address that in the areas that you're using for parking?
We actually have, for Beggar's Pizza, we have our own private plow. So we plan to utilize that as well. I understand that the snow can become kind of mountains at times. So that's why we kind of put those other ones in place. We do have a lot of space, and we think that we can, you know, manage that, but it may become an issue. But because we have that excess parking, we don't think that it will become an issue where there will be not enough parking.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. I have a question. Now, because the Lyric Theater is a historic kind of building within our city, does it need to go through any kind of historic, like, approval? It's not changing, but signage wise, bringing up the signs, does that need any kind of review or?
I take it the building is not historic in the manner that it went through some landmark, but it has to go through the UTOD, through the planning commission if they're going to do any large signs. So it would be the planning commission only. Under the UTOD, only planning would review signage.
Okay.
And the UTOD, like Amanda has mentioned, she's aware of the requirement for either Victorian signs or, modern signs, Americana signs from the 1950s and onward. They're going to probably mimic that period, the Americana period, where, it's automobile, oriented, large signs that catch your attention, which is allowed under the UTOD. It just has to go through the planning commission for signage review. But like Amanda said, they're going to use the existing sign. They're just going to bring it up. So they'll probably do a courtesy review if needed, if they're not expanding the physical sign itself.
Okay, great. I also wanted to say that I'm very excited about the Lyric reopening, and I tried to have a conversation with Janet in December, like almost a year ago, and when I saw the information, the drawings and the design and the ideas, I was very excited that you had a little bug in your ear that you actually did see my vision, and so I'm very excited. It's our version of what I thought would be a great idea and an addition to our city. So again, I'm very excited that I think this is a great opportunity, and it's got a breadth of different programs that can be shown there, and an open space for events as well as films and for people in the neighborhood to participate, and I think that's really great. As a matter of fact, today I was listening to the Chicago Film Festival. I think is having a Latin film, review, and I thought that would be, wouldn't that be something really great that we could have down in our neighborhood, since we have a large contingency of Latin people in our city, as well as those who can enjoy a Latin film. But opening up another theater down in this area just opens up other opportunities for film festival, opportunities. Although Chicago has one, maybe we can figure out somehow to incorporate into the Chicago Film Festival for the the South Side. So I think again that's a great opportunity that we might think about. But one thing I did have a question about, it just had to do with parking. Again, I think the parking, again, to Ron's point regarding parking, that's been a challenge for most of the applicants. That's like the challenge for most applicants coming through the planning and zoning. And you laid it out very well, and you guys have some great spaces. To Howard's point, one of the challenges that we may have further down the road after COVID kind of clears up a little bit and things open up a little bit more is if Moraine Valley has night classes. I don't know if they do, but if they do, there may be some need to kind of figure out how to share the parking lot so that they have space to use the parking lot as well. I can't contribute anything to recommend at this point, but that may be something we might want to try and think about and figure out in the future. I did have a question about the parking lot that used to be the old nursing home. Has that been striped? Because that's been referenced as a potential parking lot.
No, so we kind of, before we wanted to submit our application, we wanted to make sure that we secured additional parking because we knew that was a major concern. So we kind of haven't done anything with that yet because we were really hoping to get further along in the conversations with the VS USA. But because they're in, the initial phases with you guys as well. They weren't able to commit anything. We're hoping that that can be utilized as something more than a parking lot, but if need be, we will keep it as just a parking lot. So we haven't touched that yet, but we will definitely have that fully paved and striped and everything before we open.
If we need.
If we need to.
Do you have a particular timeline that I know that you got to go through this process, but do you have sort of a target maybe that you're thinking about?
I mean, optimistically, we would say the end of the year, but things usually don't go optimistically. So I would say probably the beginning of next year, we would be really hopeful that we could be open.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So this is
Does
Howard
anybody-
again.
Go ahead.
Right, I was actually speaking with the traffic and parking engineer that's going to be working on BS USA parking review and traffic mitigation review process. So they just started. So I mentioned, that, the Lyric Theater is one of the ones that they also have to take into consideration when it comes to their parking, leasing it out with the Blue Island Health Clinic and what have you. So we're all kind of working together, but they haven't really started. So that's why I guess there's no done deal yet, because they're still going through their process.
Yeah, and they did express willingness to work with us and to, they really like what we're doing and they're excited for that as well and think that we can work well together. So there's definitely hope for that. And we do, like I said, we would like to utilize that parking space as more than just a parking lot to try to bring additional things to Blue Island. So, we're kind of holding out on that one, hoping that something more can come.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I did have one other sort of comment. As we mentioned, parking seems to have taken a great percentage of this conversation. We have Ophelia's Banquet, which is opening up at the old Klein's building, and she required a parking variance because a banquet hall had not been there prior. And in this particular instance, because there was a theater, this is maintaining the theater status, that there isn't a parking variance. But one of the things, because that area has kind of filled up with businesses, our city used to be a daytime city, and it's becoming more and more a nighttime city. And so parking, traffic, all this is becoming sort of more and more part of the conversation. One of the ideas that I proposed to the city was to transition the Artesian, which is between Vermont and Grove Street. It's currently kind of along the curb. It's yellow for no parking because there used to be newspaper stands there, newspaper and the mail. You could drop off the mail there as well. There's no longer the newspaper stands. So I said, what can we do with this? Because nobody's allowed to park there. So the idea I came up with was to paint the curb green and offer the opportunity to the city to consider that as a ride-sharing kind of lane for any of the events, that instead of, suggesting to participants who are coming to any sort of larger events to participate in a ride-sharing opportunity for any of the businesses kind of around that area, so that if you're doing any kind of drinking, you can arrive and enjoy your event and then take the ride share, which kind of goes outside of the city and doesn't disturb traffic and gives us sort of a little bit less worry about parking. So as the parking areas start to become more and more busy, we're not really able to consider parking garages at this point. We hopefully maybe one day we might think about building a parking garage on one of these larger parking lots to kind of expand our parking capability. But one of the things that as that area where the Lyric and the Moraine Valley and that area starts to pick up more patronage, I would like to look actually at that area and consider where might there also be another ride sharing kind of green lane or somewhere where ride sharing can sort of set up and, you know, take it off of Western Avenue, maybe onto one of the side roads, but not necessarily into the neighborhood, where events can also encourage ride sharing to lessen the traffic and lessen the parking kind of challenges that we may have. So as the city gets bigger and bigger, and we seem to be getting more and more businesses, which is a good thing, but the parking is going to be a challenge. So that's another reason why we're looking at it, kind of a 6-month review as other businesses come in, as things change. We really want to kind of balance the business need, the parking needs, but also, you know, come up with other creative ideas for how do we allow people to come in and use our city, but also kind of balance the traffic and the parking requirements, and not onerously put onerous requirements on businesses that you've got to go out and find another parking lot or, you know, another kind of solution for parking. So anyway, that's just that. Does anybody have any more questions or comments, Howard?
Yes. So in my conversations with VS USA, I also mentioned ride sharing. So they're going to be providing some type of ride sharing on their pins or parking lot area. So this would be a good synergy to do one for, you know, Western Avenue, especially on that area, you know, that could service the students at the university, at the college, and with the Lyric Theater. So that might be our second option right there, closer
Right.
to the Lyric Theater.
Yeah, Cook County Health has been having issues as well. So it's probably going to, you know, I'm going to try and propose something sooner than later around ride sharing. It's usually, I'm trying to set up something that's sort of obvious, like a green curb, so that, you know, ride sharing companies know where they can station themselves, you know, more logically, rather than all over the city and, you know, building up a lot of traffic. I used to live in San Francisco, and it was fine until the ride sharing companies came in and just clogged up the city. And then a lot of people ended up complaining. So trying to organize it ahead of time, I'm trying to think a little bit of ahead to see how we can do this better from the beginning. So anyway, does anybody have any other questions or comments? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the special use proposed?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, Michael? Can I get a second?
This is Ron, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. The motion is approved. Okay, so the next steps for the Lyric would be, because it looks like all the information, you've got all the information, Howard. So the next steps would be.
Okay, so the next step would hopefully be Community Development Committee, which meets next Wednesday. I've already been in discussion with Fred Bellato. He's more than happy to hear this application in conjunction with the other one that's going to be heard after this one. So I provided all the materials, the staff report, supporting documents to that committee. The only thing I would like to ask Kimberly as the chair is if we could get at least some type of draft minutes that we could also provide in conjunction with them, so then we could start work with the attorney in creating the ordinance for city council eventually.
Okay, so you kind of need that like by tomorrow.
Not necessarily, but I, you know, at least, you know, who voted for it, you know, major themes, you know, like parking, ride sharing, parking is not a variance, you know, stuff like that. Just so that committee knows that, yeah, hey, you know, zoning discussed it. We went over the standard of uses. We looked at everything. We had a very good conversation. And then they approved it. Now, are you also approving it with the two conditions that I mentioned in my staff report? The first one is the trash dumpster, that it should be hopefully off of the alleyway. And then the second one is to come back in 6 months, just to re-review the parking.
I agree with that. The challenge that I have, that's not a zoning, that's a building requirement.
Right.
So I would say that is something that we'd like to see occur, and we recommend it to the Community Development Committee to please consider and put their requirement in to make this happen.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can I make a point of order here? There was a motion to second, but there was no roll call taken on that motion.
I'm sorry. You're right, Randy. I'm sorry. Can we get a roll call on that motion, please? That's Sam.
Okay, here.
Okay. Michael Sinde.
I approve.
Okay. Ron
I approve.
and Kimberly, I approve. My apologies, Randy, you're right. Okay. Anything else we're missing? Okay. I think that concludes the Lyric Theater, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You all can stay on the call or you can drop off, but we're going to go ahead and start in on the next CMR Auto Services review.
Thank
Thank you all
so
for
much,
attending
everyone.
and participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you.
Well done, thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
for your
so much.
commitment to the city.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda.
So do you want me to read the, Kimberly, do you want me to read the notification that was on the agenda for the second one?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, so per the zoning ordinance, the planning commission and the zoning board of appeals will review an applicant's request for a special use to allow for an automobile repair shop in the commercial district, which is commonly known as C-1. The applicant would like to create a new business called CMR Auto Services LLC that deals specifically with repairing automobiles in a commercial nature. So that's the official agenda description. That's how it was advertised in our local newspaper. Now, I'm not sure as the chair, if you want me to speak what the planning commissioners reviewed and what were the conditions that they added to the ones that I mentioned, or do you want for the applicant to present their application? And then when it comes towards the some of the conditions that I've asked for in the staff report, then I could also talk about what the planning commission wanted also.
I think I'd like to start with the presentation,
Okay.
and then we can go and follow up with procedure.
Good.
So who will be presenting? Is that Miguel or Janet?
Yes. You want to go ahead, Janet?
Okay.
You there still?
I'm still here.
You want to go ahead and present it, or you want me to?
You can go ahead and present, Miguel, and I'll, anything that's needed, I'll add, okay?
Sure. Hi, so my name is Miguel Castillo, and I'm just presenting this application for a special use for this business that we want to bring over to the city. I know there's been a lot of things about the parking lot, about the residential and all that. And our plan is not to interview with any of the traffic is already there in the city, and also not to the residents. And we just want to make some business and help the city and we're not a mechanic at least also, so we all are professionals, so we want to do a right work and right job for the customers and for the city, so we can interview with nobody in the area.
Can you talk about sort of the hours, your customer base?
What are hours?
Any other information?
Yes, our hours is going to be from 8 to 5, and a customer, is mostly going to be. We start with a appointment. So all the business that we're going to do, we're just not going to do any like after hours receiving from tow trucks or anything. So we don't be bothering nobody around at midnight with any tow trucks dropping any cars. Also, our repairs is not going to be a big major repairs like replacing transmission or engines. They will take a longer and be having a car sitting on the lot. There's also a big thing for any shop. And I'm not just planning to be a shop like all the shops that you got around. They just got all these garbage sitting around there without just making a bad impression to the city. So, and also Mr. Capari was talking about something about cutting a curve to the east side of the parking lot. We don't need it to do anything there because the part of the building, the lot, we're gonna use it as a parking space for our own workers or to have one or two cars. So it depends if it needs to be repaired in there, and not be sitting too long. So that way we don't give a bad impression.
Do you want me to talk a little bit about the staff report and where I'm going with some of the conditions I'm asking for, or do you want Janet to fill in now?
Janet, if you can.
Go ahead.
Yes, well, for the most part, I think Mr. Costello spoke on what the intentions is for CMR. The business, again, is not intended to be a long-term auto repair, more like a quick service center. I would hate to use, like a Jiffy Lube, but something a little bit more detailed than that, but providing that same in and out service. It's really to do, I guess, preventive maintenance care. And as far as the amount of traffic, because I know that is a concern. I'm familiar with that little pocket right there where the Cook County Medical Facility is and the congestion for that area. But where it's being potentially proposed to have that cut out into Western Avenue, I think that would bring a problem where right now, if I can remember well, the interest, because I went over there to take a look myself, the interest to the property going into the shop was off on the side street there. And so from our discussions and me becoming familiar with the activity of my clients, it appeared that they would go in from the side street and exit right there in the back of the building into the alley where, they're not even probably not even 500 feet away from the end of the alley to leave the building.
So the entrance and the exit are one and the same?
No, they're two. There's an entrance that can be utilized right there on the side street. I don't know what the name of that street is there, but the exit facility would be out the rear door, which exits into the alley, but the building is it's the last building on the corner. So when they're exiting out of the building, they're going like one, maybe 2 car lengths down the alley.
So the entrance is on Oak Street and the exit through the alley is going to the north. Kimberly, if that helped make sense.
Okay, gotcha. I'm wondering if it might just be the opposite. Is there any way to do it the opposite? That way you're not going down the alley?
No, because then you're looking at entering through the alley. So you're asking customers to enter the facility from the alley.
Just as I'm just trying to think about this because that way you're not blocking the street if you've got a couple of cars. So I don't want to get into too many questions because I know Howard has his information, but that's going to be one of the questions that I'm going to have. But I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. If you have more, Janet, please let us know, and then we'll switch over to Howard, and then we'll switch over to questions.
Let me answer this, Janet. And for the customers to receive, we're gonna receive them right on the main entrance. There is on the Oak Avenue on the south side of the building, and we're gonna have a few parking spots inside the building, so that way we don't interfere with the street or loading or unloading any the customers right on the street. So that way we cannot be waiting or blocking the street all. So we're trying to make it work and have everything done inside the building. We got plenty of space to have at least 3 cars waiting online to be served, and then we got enough space to have everything inside without interfering in the street.
Okay. Miguel or Janet, do you have any other thoughts or comments before we switch over to Howard?
That was just Miguel there speaking. No other comment right now.
Okay, Howard?
Okay, so I represented both the two applicants in the planning commission in the first meeting. So I pretty much went over the staff report. So I'm just going to go quickly. So Miguel Castillo is the applicant. The property owner, his name is Donald Stoffel. And Miguel would like to reestablish an auto repair shop in a commercial district C1 zone. Per the city ordinance number 99-256, whenever there's a transfer or a sale, or it goes from one business owner to another, the person who wants to open up the new auto repair facility will have to go for a special use. Hence the reason why we're having this meeting tonight for the auto repair. So again, the property main entrance garage door is on Oak Street, and the cars will exit through the rear garage door onto the alleyway directly behind the building. Mr. Castillo has 5 workstations in the building, and the building footprint is about 50 feet in width and 80 feet in depth, plus or minus 4,000 square feet in building size. As the applicant explained, he would like to use the gravel parking lot to park vehicles in a temporary manner for at most 2 days. He would like to do it. Probably he would like to pave that area in 3 years from opening up his shop. His idea is to provide for preventive maintenance. Of course, CMR Auto Services LLC hours are from 8 to 5, Monday through Saturday. And then as part of the staff report, I had four questions or conditions, mostly conditions that have to be reviewed by planning and zoning so this application can move forward to community development and city council. The first one is the most important one. I quoted section 150.011, section 150.101 called construction specification that says all off-street parking areas, loading facilities, driveways required by the city shall be constructed with either concrete or asphalt services. So that's a building code requirement. The reason why I'm mentioning is because we're listening to a special use where he would like to park on a gravel parking lot. Then I also quoted section 150.101E, that number 1, and I'll read it in full detail. No buildings, or premises shall be used or occupied unless the parking areas, loading facilities, driveways serving them are improved. No certificate of occupancy shall be issued until those areas are constructed. So again, in my staff report and finishing this paragraph, I go into detail saying that the parking lot will have to be either paved with asphalt or concrete, and it needs to be done prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, not 3 years down the road. So then I offer 2 alternatives. The first one is a good working compromise, is to build a portion of the paved parking lot immediately in conjunction with the business license application, building permit for this business to start, and to build a portion of it. The Planning Commission already gave me some ideas on what they're looking for. And then the second one is to do it in a time manner. In other words, if he wants to pave the whole parking lot, which if you look at the staff report, I provided the tax map. That would be pin 032. That's the area that I'm talking about. And 033 which is a portion of it. It's kind of like an L-shaped artificial zoning parcel. That's the area that he would like to pave. So the idea is to, pave a portion at the beginning in conjunction with the CO, and then to do the rest of it in a more planned manner and a timely manner. Because in Blue Island, especially, the requirements are drainage, lighting, landscaping, and decorative fencing. Or the other option is, if it's a cost factor for either the property owner, Donald Stoffel, who also owns this, he owns all these pins that is shown on the tax map, or if the business owner cannot do it because of financial, then that area should not be utilized to park any vehicles on a gravel parking lot, and that, vacant lot, and that vacant lot should be, clear of any debris, construction, parts, or vehicles parked there. So that's the first one. And like in my staff report, I mentioned I had a very challenging conversation with both the property owner and the business owner on this, because they would like to utilize that vacant lot for parking, either temporarily or in a 2-day manner. Now, please keep in mind, under the C1 district, parking is not required for this business. So I'm not asking for parking because he needs to fulfill the parking requirements for the actual building or workstation. This is to provide for vehicles on site if they're being worked on or they're in the process of being worked on later on in the day. Now, my second condition deals with the existing trash dumpster. Currently, the trash dumpster is located inside of the property and it's locked, which is fine. But eventually the trash dumpster cannot be located in the alleyway. The applicant needs to make an effort to keep the trash dumpsters on site and needs to screen it. So I quote it again, section 1.63.11, screening of trash dumpsters and bins. I'll read it. Trash containers, dumpsters, trash compactors, recycling bins associated with a multi-unit residential or non-residential use, which would be this auto repair, must be screened from public view on all sides with a solid fence constructed either of cedar, redwood, masonry, or similar building materials, reflecting the overall design of the site. And there's also a second part to this, that there should be at least 20 feet minimum site distance of the trash dumpster from the property line, which would be here, the alleyway also. However, like I wrote in my staff report, staff is willing to work with Mr. Castillo to place it closer to the setback area internally if we could find some type of a compromise. Then the third one is the existing traffic guardrail, which will need to be repaired. Staff understand that this is probably does not belong to the property owner, Mr. Donald Stoffel, but a portion of that bollard is located right behind the subject property. So this is a private matter that needs to be resolved as quickly as possible, in which the current property owner or business owner who's sitting here in Zoom will need to reach out to the other business owner about how that traffic guardrail should either be removed, repaired, or replaced. That's a property maintenance issue, and that needs to be resolved as quickly as possible. It's a public nuisance. It's considered an unsafe structure per building. And then the fourth condition deals with the obsolete sign, which is found between the first and second floor of the building that abuts Western Avenue. Per section 1.01.22, obsolete signage, any sign, whether existing on or erected after the effective date of this ordinance, which identifies a business no longer being conducted or a product no longer being sold or from, must be taken down and removed by the owner or agent of the building or premise the sign is found. So currently this obsolete sign, which is protruding, it's a wall sign that's protruding onto Western Avenue, was last used by Multi-State Transmission, which has been out of business since 2017. I went on Google Maps to look at older screenshots, and multi-state transmission last used that sign in 2009. So clearly, this is a sign that's no longer in use. They removed the sign face, the transparent fluorescent tubes are there, but that sign cannot be reused for this business for two reasons. The first one is you can't have a wall sign that does not front a public street. The wall sign is fronting a vacant lot. And then the second one, you can't have a sign that's on a building that does not inhabit the business that's being used, right? That's the building where State Farm is located. Where Mr. Castillo wants to do his business is the secondary building that is closer towards the alleyway. So that sign will have to be removed. So those are the four conditions that I've asked for, which I've shared with both Janet and Miguel earlier last week. They received a copy of the staff report and they are aware. As part of my staff report, I provided a zoning, I provided a tax map, and we have to go into details like the planning commission did. I provided documentation that the zoning sign was properly put on the building. Pictures of the vacant lot from the front and rear. On page 9, you'll see the damaged guardrail that I'm talking about. And then at the bottom of page 9 is the sign that's no longer allowed. And then I showed the screenshot of 2009 and 2017 where multi-state had their sign face. If you look at these two pictures from 2009 and 17, you'll see vehicles are parked on a gravel lot. We do not allow for that anymore, especially on Western Avenue in the Uptown area. According to the building code, commercial parking lot has to be paved. So we can't allow for that to happen anymore. And then on page 11 is an architectural rendering of the interior floor plan. And then we have a three-dimensional building rendering. So those are the conditions. Now, if I'm given permission, I like to go over what the planning commissioners found and how they voted on this application.
Please do, Howard. That'd be great. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So please bear with me. I took notes. So the first one is this. They don't have a problem with the paving. However, they would like for the area to be paved. It should be, if you look on page of the staff report, page 6, at the bottom is the Cook County map. You'll see the pins 32, 33, 34 are all owned by the same business property owner, Donald Stoffel. The auto repair is the one that's highlighted in red. That's the building. And then you have the other building that's also owned by the property owner. That's the one with State Farm. And then you have the vacant lot that incorporates 32 and 33 under the pins. What the Planning Commission would like to see paved is for the edge of the building on pin 32 all the way up to the building next to it. So that's between 25 or 30 feet in width, and then the length of the building, which is 50. So they're looking for maybe 150 square feet of paved area. One of the requirements was that the access to the alleyway needs to be paved. There needs to be a roadway that, you go from the door to the alleyway, because currently the cars will go on gravel. So that's what they're recommending, the Planning Commission, to pave that area, which they will allow for maybe 3 or 4 cars to be parked back there in a temporary manner. But the vacant lot from the building where the auto repair facility will be located all the way towards Western Avenue shall remain vacant. Now, if the property owner or the business owner down the road wants to pave it also, then we could go through a proper engineering review where we'll look at landscaping, drainage, lighting, and decorative fencing if it's required, and look at a possible curb cut on Western Avenue. Please keep in mind that a business should always use a public street versus an alleyway to conduct their business. In this situation, the way the door is oriented towards the alleyway, it's existing, so we're going to continue with that. but the emphasis should be on a public street, not on a public alleyway. So that's the first one. That's the condition that the Planning Commission has requested. In regards to the trash dumpster, they're not too interested in having some type of an enclosure. If the area that's fenced between the building and the other building on the alleyway and the fence, if they put a fence at the edge of the building where they would have their paved parking lot, if it has slats through it, then that trash dumpster that's on site on the property, it's being properly screened from people viewing it on Western Avenue and the residential home that abuts it on the alleyway. So if there's slats on the fence, then they're fine with having the trash dumpster on the property, which has to be carted out when a truck comes to pick up the garbage. Now, in relations to the business, they did have some concerns for the residential. They would like for business, if the business hours are extended, that it extends up to 7 p.m. And they would like to have no tow truck service provided for this property. So for example, some business auto repair shops will have a tow truck that they own, that they go and pick up vehicles. They do not want to see a tow truck on this site. However, they do understand the planning commissioners that there might be a tow truck that brings a vehicle. They're requesting for the tow truck to deliver the vehicle between business hours, not anything over that, because of the neighbor, because of the residences around it. Their main concern for the residential is noise, lights, and smells, and of course the hours, right? So again, the Planning Commission would like to tie it, saying that if there is a car that's brought on site, it could be towed, but it has to be towed during regular hour. And then the other condition that they have put is they would like for me to reach out to the property owner at pin 026 and speak with them if they have any concerns on lights or hours, just to make sure that they are aware, or he or she, or if it's a family, that this auto repair facility is going to be coming online and there's going to be vehicles going back and forth on the alleyway, to see if there's any conditions that they would like to also request as part of the process. So that would be done during the building permit process with me and the resident right there. Then in regards to the other ones, they're fine with the paving of the parking lot with their requirements. The second one, the trash dumpster, they're fine if it's screened with the existing fencing. The third one, the guardrail should be replaced, removed, or repaired. And then the fourth one, they're fine with removing that sign, the obsolete sign that's on Western Avenue. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
They also requested the Planning Commission. They would not like to see any vehicles parked on that gravel lot. They are afraid that's going to become a lot that might be used to house inoperable vehicles or vehicles being sold through the internet. They're requesting for the building department to do proper property maintenance enforcement if necessary. That's per the planning commissioners.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Miguel, did you have some comments?
I got some comments about the payment and the parking lot. We're not trying to have that done in 1 or 3 years. Just as soon as the sooner the better for everybody, because also we need to be able to move the cars inside, and a gravel is sometimes it's hard to push any car. And that's the only thing that we're trying to ask is just to give us a little bit more time to once we start working on the building, to have all the payment, to all the asphalt done, no longer than I would say no longer than a year. I say all depends how long it will take us to have all the permits done. And probably by the beginning of the year, we already will have all the parking lot, asphalt and everything.
So, as I mentioned, that's a building code that the building official will have to enforce. So any parking that's associated, either a driveway or a parking pad, if you want to call it a parking pad, has to be built prior to the certificate of occupancy for your business license application. So there is no, that's a building code and there's no variances for that. He has to follow that code. The reason why I bring it up here is because it's part of the approval through the city that this has to be discussed and it has to start, we're gonna have to come to a conclusion how that's gonna be done.
Okay.
So the planning commissioners are willing to say, hey, you don't have to pave the whole parking lot. You don't have to go to IDOT for the curb cut, which they prefer. They allow you to pave directly behind the building that goes all the way to the other building, which I mentioned again, 50 feet in width. This is the width of your building by 25 or 30 in the width of that. So it's the length and the width. So they're allowing you to pave, and they feel like that is a good compromise for you to have your certificate of occupancy in conjunction with paving it. They're not requesting that you go through the whole, it has to be landscape, lighted and all that, but the only thing they're asking for, there needs to be at least a catch basin to capture water on that parking area.
Could you repeat that, Howard?
So what the
What is that
planning
requirement?
commissioners, what the planning commissioners would like to see is the area directly behind the building that goes north, which is probably 25 or 30 feet. I have to go measure it. I don't know what's the width. By the width of the building, which is 50.
About the water capture.
A catch basin. They're going to have to put at least a catch basin in the middle of the lot or the paved area to capture the water, and then it infiltrates into the water table underneath.
Does that catch basin have to be, let's say you recommended the half, if it were to be paved halfway from, say, the alley, to cover people entering into the parking lot, does the catch basin have to be within that paved area, or could it be in the second paved area?
On the property. It's going to have to be pitched in a way that the water is captured towards the middle. So the ends of the parking lot are going to be a little bit higher. So when it rains, the water will go towards the middle. So it won't go towards the alleyway. It won't go towards the gravel lot, which could go onto Western Avenue.
So whether it's half or whether it's full, it needs to have that catch basin.
Yeah. And that's going to be a requirement, at least for building, which the building official and Eric Alvarez will have to review.
And Howard, is that a requirement incumbent then upon the property owner or the business owner?
Well, I leave it up to whoever wants to do it. I already spoke with the property owner and he does not want to put any money towards this property. So it's going to be the business owner if he wants to have his business license issued. He will have to do it.
And do you know, has this been the same property owner that has had this property for a period of time?
Well, I spoke with him numerous times last December and early this January. The property was originally owned by the parents, but since the parents are older, the son is kind of, maintaining the property, leasing the property. So it's still part of the family, the Stuffle family.
I mean, it's pretty clear to me that from a parking lot perspective, there's been no improvements to that lot for as long as I've lived here. And it became an eyesore, candidly, with a lot of junk cars parked in it over the years. That it's unfortunate. I don't disagree with it. And I, personally, commend the applicant for wanting to utilize the facility to put it back to good use for, something that ostensibly is a needed part of our, the business, not the major repairs, but just the maintenance, keep things going quick in and out. I mean, to me, that's a good use of it. So, I would encourage some level of an optional way to accommodate the needs as well as to be able to get the business going, in such a manner that, like any business, to get it going, it takes a little, it takes a while to kind of get things. So
Right, so the final option that I mentioned is if they want to leave the vacant lot the way it is, they should at least pave enough of the area to have the cars go onto a paved driveway that goes onto the alleyway. That would be worst case scenario, most cost beneficial for the applicant to apply for a business license application. If he has more money, he wants to do what the planning commissioner recommended as a first step, then they're fine with that also.
Does anyone have any other kind of questions?
Yeah, this is Janet. I do. I have a question. So I understand the concern about that area of the property, mainly because of where it is located. However, my client and I had discussed that area once before. He feels a little different in some areas that I do about that section. So putting a private fence there to prevent it from being seen, on the other side of it, period, would that help? And I have a concern where the owner of the property isn't, willing to do the improvement of that property, where we're talking about a leaser doing such a high level of improvement. Because to do asphalt or concrete even is very expensive. And then the drainage and all of that, I mean, at some point, even if he did the whole lot, wouldn't that mean that an engineer or someone would have to come in order to determine what the pitch is and things like that for the flow of water and, so that everything is done properly? Wouldn't that end up being a very expensive cost for someone that's leasing property?
So Howard again, yeah, and that was the concerns that the planning commissioners had. Originally, they would have liked to see concrete, but they understand asphalt is more economical. In regards to the parking lot, like I mentioned before, if it's going to be a small area that's going to be paved, the area that the planning commissioners would like to see 50 by 25 or 30, they're fine with having it pitched or paved. And probably have a catch basin that captures the water, then it infiltrates underground. It just percolates into the sandy soil. So there wouldn't be much of a gray infrastructure investment. However, the planning commissioners do understand that if the property owner down the road wants to pave that whole area, then we're going to need a real engineered plan, landscaping, lighting, drainage, and what have you. So in the interim, the planning commissioners are fine with having it paved. He has to comply with the city requirements for building of a paved parking lot. It needs to have some type of a catch basin or something to capture the water. Now, again, the planning commissioners are fine if they want to put a fence. If you want to put a fence at the edge of the building that has slats with it, so then nobody could see the trash dumpster on Western Avenue, no, that's fine also.
I have a quick question. Ms. Davis, are you an attorney for Mr. Castillo? Are you a business partner? What is your relationship?
I'm the accountant for the company.
Okay, thank you.
And I had this conversation. I had this conversation with the property owner in December of last year. Down the road, there needs to be some type of investment here. Because if you have you have two buildings, and you have two buildings that have a parking lot that serves the customer, that property is going to be more valued. And it's going to increase the lease capacity. Currently, the way it is, it's, you know, what the planning commissioner's concern is, they don't want to see cars parked, especially on the street, and cars going back and forth near residential homes. That's their main concern.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far afield, but I think everybody's comments are right. I mean, on the one hand, we want to do what we can to support, the business and getting a business up and running. And I guess I'm just surprised that over the years there hasn't been, or maybe there are not, building codes enforcement relative to the condition of that gravel lot that's been like that for how many decades?
Yeah.
Right.
That would obligate the property owner to do something.
But at this point, and that's why I had, raised a concern about it, because it's almost like it's, and I'm not a lawyer and I'm not in the legal affairs or things like that, but it's like it's acceptable. It's been acceptable. There were other businesses that were the same like businesses there, and at this point, why did the standards change? Or, I understand the concern because it's of the location, the type of business. Do I understand that clearly? But what's the term that's generally used? The grandfathered in laws or something? Right. So that's where I'm going, what?
Not in this situation, because you're in front of the planning, zoning, city council, and community development. You're asking for a special use to reuse this property as an auto repair. And that's the time when the city can enforce their rules and regulation little by little. The city over the years have tried to enforce the dumpsters from being moved out of the alleyway onto private properties. The city has enforced signage, which I'm part of that enforcement process. And the city is enforcing now that the properties that have cars parked anyway, they need to start being parked on paved parking lots. And the city is going to start the enforcement process like the ones on Western Avenue where you have an inoperable vehicle for more than 6 months. They're going to start enforcing it. It's just like with everything. Over the years, the aldermen felt, we need to start moving forward. We need to start enforcing the code. These codes have been in the books for many years. This is nothing new that I'm saying. The process, the problem here is we have different professionals here that are adhering to the rules and responsibilities that needs to be followed. Prior to that, things were done a little differently, but we're trying to correct it. Like I mentioned in my staff report, I'm not against reusing the box sign in front of the building on Oak Street. I'm willing to work with the applicant. He could put a new face on it so he doesn't have to spend money on putting a new sign on Oak Street. But in the UTOD zone for signage, it needs to be a different sign. So the compromise I have here is I allow for that box sign to be continued, but the one on Western Avenue has to be removed. In relationships to the trash dumpster, if you follow the code, it has to be at least 20 feet from a boundary or property line. That's physically impossible. If he has it like 4 or 5 feet behind the fenced area that's screened, he could keep it like that. He could just have someone move it out when the truck comes. The idea is to remove dumpsters off of the alleyway because the alleyway is supposed to be used for vehicles passing. So little by little, we're trying to work with the property owner, the business owner, even with the paving of the parking lot. I'm not asking for it to be paved. I gave them different options, either pave it a little bit, don't pave it at all, or pave it all. It depends, but it's going to be tied to a certificate of occupancy, and the building official will have to follow that.
Howard, I know the building is off of Oak Street and the entrance is off Oak Street, but are there any restrictions on usage of Western Avenue in terms of what it was previously designed as, and then
as an entrance?
It appears that there's no physical curb cuts on on Western Avenue. So there might have been a building one time there that was torn down and gravelled over, and they just kept using that as a place to park vehicles.
So because there's no building on Western Avenue, it doesn't
Right.
relate to those.
Well, the property owner has the ability to put a building there. You know, the C1 UTOD zone allows for pretty much putting a building up to the property line. So if he wants to fill it, he can. The only thing is, you know, like always, if you're doing something new, then you're going to have to provide for some type of parking mitigation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. And I just want for clarity. So I'm hearing, I think I hear that there's going to be the potential for service work, and the service work is I heard something like the Jiffy Lube kind of purpose. I was unclear a little bit about other than the Jiffy Lube type of a quick service capability, is there any other type of you know, really fixing something, or, you know, changing something within the engine or the body or the, you know, the transmission or anything like that? You know, any type of real car work being done, or is it just the services that you're really anticipating?
This is Miguel. On this, the question is like not like on a bigger jobs. They will take longer. Mostly be like on the suspension, brakes, oil changing, mufflers. Something that can be done on the same day and not be sitting or having the car sitting for too long in there for waiting to be repaired. So there's something that can be done like this quick, not to hold in the cars too long.
How many bays are there?
We plan to have at least 4 bays to start.
Okay.
And it's just plenty of room for more, but it all depends how is the business growing. Or.
And do they have to make an appointment, or can they just show up and say, I need some work? Or
mostly right now to start with is going to be an appointment, and a lot of those customers that we're going to start having is most of the people that we already know. I'm already a mechanic, so I got a lot of customers that will start bringing over once we open. And
okay.
all those people knows they work as through a appointment.
Okay. My other question would be, if they have an appointment and let's just say it's running longer, and so another appointment shows up, where are they waiting for service? And this was kind of my point of, where does a car enter? You know, I agree, you know, coming off the street into the garage, it's part of the elegant, I would call it the elegant solution. The practical part of me says, okay, if you've got more than a couple of cars kind of waiting or in the garage and trying to get, you know, in and out, are the doors big enough for, you know, cars, multiple cars to kind of get in and out easily? Or is it, you got to maneuver those cars and pull cars out and pull another one in and that sort of thing? And or if a car is waiting, are you expecting that they're going to wait out on the street? That was why I was saying, you know, if you have the entrance kind of from the back, there's that parking area where they can wait temporarily for service, and then, you know, cars go out the front to kind of, you know, clear out the garage. So, you know, I don't, maybe it's logistics for me, but I'm trying to, that's my logic that I'm looking at this.
Yes. Well, we will have enough space for at least 3 cars to be waiting to be served. Plus, we got the 4 bays, so there's at least 7 cars. Then I don't think that we're gonna have another 2 or 3 waiting to be served, unless we don't make the appointment for whoever is gonna come. So that way we have a little more control on the traffic to go in there. We're not gonna say come over if it is a job that it's gonna take an hour. You know, it's we never know on the time, but it's mostly when you make an appointment, you know what you're gonna do, and you know what time they might gonna take. If it gets a little bit, like hard to do it, that way we can have a better planning for the parking and for the people to be waiting to be served.
Employees, how many employees will you be, do you plan to employ?
We always start with 3 employees. Well, 4 with a writer or the secretary. So yeah, we're planning to start at least with 4.
And where will they park?
There's the part that we're gonna Mr. Kapari asking to do the payment and the asphalt on the back. So I think there's a plenty of room to at least have a 3 or 4 cars parking on the asphalt part.
See, the
And if a
idea,
car stays,
yeah, you see
hang on,
the
let me ask one
idea,
more question. Oh, hang on. So if a car is going to need to stay overnight, it'll stay in the bay?
It will stay inside the building.
Okay. I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
so the idea is to have the employees park, let's say, in a municipal parking lot and just walk over instead of occupying that critical area that you want to save for your customers to park. Because if you're just going to put the paved area to park the employees, then we're back at the same square one problem. People are going to just start parking in the alleyway, which is a no-no because then a fire truck can't pass by, an ambulance and an emergency. And then if I'm not mistaken, that whole area down on Oak Street has restricted parking because of the Blue Island Health Clinic.
Right.
Yes, so that's why we also send you the place survey for how we're gonna do the inside of the building. They will got plenty of space for to have those cars they're gonna serve instead of having anybody waiting outside or parking somewhere else.
Miguel, I think it was Mr. Kapari that just got through speaking, saying, could the employees, did you say, could they park like somewhere within the regular street parking or something?
Yeah, either regular street parking, which allows for people to park, or park in a municipal parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to create space for the customers, because
Right.
it's like other places. You have a restaurant. If all the employees park in the parking lot, then the customers are parking on the street. We're back to where we were.
Right.
Now, I also want to follow up on something because I know this is always a cost factor. I mentioned it to Mr. Stoffel and I mentioned to Donald and Castillo that we do have the Business Development Grant Program, which allows for reimbursement of 75% of cost up to 7,500 cost limit to do this type of improvement. So maybe you're going to be putting up a new fence with slats to prevent lights or cars or trash being viewed on Western Avenue. And this could also help pay for the paved area that you're going to be paving. What I would request is you submit your building permit and you submit the building business license the Business Development Grant Program application in conjunction. So you already have a building permit, you're already doing the work, then it could be, you can get some money being reimbursed back to you. So keep that in mind also, 7,500, the limit, or 75% off the cost of the work of the asphalt area.
Okay.
Because it covers for parking area.
Well, right, and Ms. Davis, to your question, again, for clarity, we do have an ordinance that disallows parking other than residential parking. In other words, you have to be a resident of Blue Island to park along the streets, most of the streets between pretty much 127th and Grove Street, because Cook County Health people were coming in and parking along the residential area, and the residents were not allowed to park there. So again, I want to emphasize that any customers that are coming in cannot park, along the residential streets.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
employees cannot park unless they are a Blue Island resident. They cannot park along the residential streets. So again, I'm trying to think about all these things sort of out loud, because I'm some of these things we haven't talked about, and I know they're going to happen. And there's a limited, potentially, if the business goes with sort of a partial paving of the parking area inside that quadrant area, it's going to block anybody who's parked there, whether it's a customer or whether it's an employee. It's kind of going to block that entrance or that exit, if you will. So so my other question is, I don't think there's going to be, unless you have that half parking, even with that half parking, you're not really going to be able to park anything in there because it's really not big enough. Right. So whether you're a customer or whether you're an employee, is there really any opportunity to park in there? Unless you park the whole, pave the whole parking lot, or a greater 3/4 of the parking lot, so that there's availability to park. So, my expectation is at this point, unless there's half or more, there shouldn't be any parking there for egress purposes. Am I wrong? Okay, I'm not wrong. So.
Right, because the idea is to have a paved area for people to drive out towards the rear door, towards the alleyway. That's a given.
Right, so it's a drive area, not a parking anywhere area. So to me, unless you park at least 3/4 or more of that parking area, there's no parking in that lot, because it's going to block people getting out of the bays and off the property.
And you also have
the trash dumpster. Yeah. So all of that's going to block anything that relates to parking inside that quadrant. So I feel like we need to be clear about, what can be done, what can't be done, because you can't block people from getting out and you can't block people from getting in. And that parking dumpster, it's either got to be inside the building, or if it's out in the parking lot, it's got to be enclosed, and that's going to take up space as well. That's the kind of the elephant in the room that I see. So that, I think, needs to be sort of determined.
So the enclosure for the garbage can just be the privacy fencing? If it were to stay where it is now, on the photo?
Yes.
If the privacy fencing is there?
Yes.
It could stay there.
Right, because the privacy fence will cover the trash dumpsters on one side or the other side.
Right.
And there's enough room between the fence and the opening of the garage to put that dumpster without blocking that entrance?
Yeah, it looks like there's plenty of room there.
Yeah, if you look at the photo, it's going to be a little complicated because you also have a door.
Right.
Right.
And because of fire safety, there shouldn't be anything blocking a door.
But it looks like the toter can come forward to allow opening of that door. So it kind of looks like it'll still fit behind there, at the end of that fence where the door should be able to open. But I do understand what you're saying about that paved area. So, Mr. Kapari, you're saying pave the driveway part where when you're coming out the door, start the paving there and take it to the fence?
Yeah, it's not necessarily me. It was what the planning commissioners decided.
Right.
They understand that the applicant will probably do this in one part or two parts. So to show goodwill, they're willing to allow for the entire area directly behind the building to be paved. If Castillo paves all of that, he might be able to have 2 cars parked plus the dumpster. Something is better than nothing. If
Right.
he chooses not to pave anything, there should be at least like a triangular area that is paved, so allows for the cars to come out. So the car leaves the building, goes on a paved driveway, then goes to a paved alleyway. So at least that's the minimum.
I have another question as it relates to that, though. Does the fire department need to review that for spacing, any kind of spacing and the opening?
So the fire department usually reviews application during the business license application process. So their main concern is the interior exits and doors, and getting access to it. So if it's a paved area and they don't have anything blocking it, it should be fine. But they're gonna make their findings during that process.
I'm trying to talk about some of this now because I think that's an important question to ensure that that's understood. I don't want to walk away from this meeting and the CMR Auto Services understands one thing and the fire department comes along and says something else.
Right. So what I would highly recommend is Mr. Castillo comes into the building department, has a meeting with the building official, Mr. Sandino, Chief Rita, and just go over this, building and fire. What are your concerns? Because for zoning, this is not a concern for me. Of course, I'm looking at for the parking, I'm looking at the paved area, but this is something that they're going to have to discuss very early on before he submits anything.
Okay. If it's outside of our purview, you're saying that the trash can is outside of, and where it sits in the parking lot is outside of our purview, then I'm going to sidestep it and let you all figure that out in the building department.
Right. The building official is going to say you can't block a doorway, and so does the fire chief. The only way that trash dumpster goes along the side of the building past the diagonal door, garage door, and it should be fine. This is away from the main entrances.
Okay.
What the fire department cares is having access to the building at all angles. So they're going to break through that fence to put out a fire. They're going to just run their truck through that fence, and anything that's there, they're going to run over.
It's that the dumpster is going to be right there. So that's just what I'm saying. It's a potential challenge. So, so the guardrail is also not something that is that part of our zoning as well that we need to
it's a property
ensure that we have
that I'm bringing it up because it's better to have this discussion now versus prior to a CO being issued. Oh, I didn't know about this. That guardrail is a nuisance, and I think it should be removed, but I'm not the property owner. I don't own that. The city doesn't own that. So it's probably the building owner that has that guardrail behind that building that put it up some time to protect its building. But that's a private matter.
So it makes perfect sense. So basically what you're suggesting then is between the parking lot being halfway, paved in some sort of reasonably agreeable, minimum, the trash dumpster enclosure, the sign is
sign's the easiest.
Correct?
Right.
Pardon me?
The sign is the easiest, just remove it.
But is that zoning or is that something that's building?
So the sign is a zoning issue, it falls under the signage code, so I have to enforce it, like I enforce it with other businesses. Tires R Us is a good example with the roof sign. The guardrail, that's a property maintenance issue, that's building. The paved area, that's building. I'm quoting the sections.
So signs is really the only thing that we really need to have a discussion about and make a determination. Is that correct?
That is correct. But the planning commissioners already approved the other conditions that I've listed here, so.
Okay.
Either you accept it or mitigate it or strike it out or build on it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, does anybody have any other questions or comments? It's 9:28. The question would be do we have enough information to make decisions and to vote on it, or do we need to continue this for any other further information? Does anyone have any comments? Ron?
Yeah, it's just a couple of things. And again, thank you for all the work to kind of put it together and to walk us through it and so forth. It's, to me, and I've been by the property, and on the one hand, just looking through the windows, it looks like it's a very well-maintained property. It's very clean. I often thought somebody should be using this property that's got, the skills and talent to do that. And it certainly sounds like, if you've got a following as a mechanic, right? I mean, there's nothing like having a good mechanic that you can trust. And I'm sure you'll be very successful, from that perspective. To me, the parking lot, I guess I have one of the questions from a fire department perspective, because access, egress, sprinkling and all that kind of thing is, if there's sprinkling required, and I don't know if it is or isn't in there, but if there's modifications, if it is in there, is that another one that is optionally to be borne by the person that's going to rent the property as opposed to the owner?
Yes.
So and I don't know the owner, but it sure seems to me like there should be some responsibility that the property owner would have to maintain a facility like that clearly is not going to be used for pretty much anything other than
what it
repairs
is
of some type. And similarly, that whole parking lot issue, I mean, again, for decades it's been like that. So minimally to put some finishing touches in the back to pave it, to me would be minimal expense for a property owner. If I were the property owner, I certainly would want to do that, because I'll be able to attract better renters as opposed to putting it on the shoulders of whoever's going to rent it, unless there's some agreement or negotiation with the property owner to say, look, I'll work on getting this put in, but I want an offset on my rent, right, on the first 6 months or the first year. I mean, that's only fair to me. So, I'd love to see a business that's operational in there. I think parking the challenge would be, how do you manage the inflow and the outflow when, people are, even if you have appointments. I know I've worked with other areas that, Ridge Auto is a good example, right? They've got a good following and they've got a pretty big lot. And even that gets crowded at times. So, that's the challenges that I see from my perspective, but I do applaud the desire to want to try to work through it and make it available in a usable parcel again.
I have one comment. Are you finished, Ron?
Yes.
I have one comment. Was Robert Stroffel invited to this meeting? He's the owner of the property.
And that would be a question for Janet.
Yes, he is informed. I don't know if he was directly invited to the meeting or not, because I did not take part in inviting him. I have spoken to him in regards to the property. I'm sorry, I forgot the gentleman's name that just spoke, but I have a lot of reservations and feel the same way that he does in a lot of those areas. And I don't want to speak out of place, because this is, for my client. However, there has to be some way for Mr. Castillo and his partners to be able to gain something back, because in the end, I'm considering, so let's say the business doesn't survive. Let's just say it doesn't. And they spend tens of thousands of dollars. We know alone, just to go out there and start doing that lot, it could be a lot of money, then that means that they're walking away from an improvement to a property that's not even there.
Sorry.
You know, so that's always been a big concern of mine. I understand the need for both, you know, the safety, the beautification, the maintenance of the community. I really do. I agree wholeheartedly with all of that. But when it comes down to the financials of my client, that's the position that I'm in. And my concern is, you know, what are the responsibilities of the owner of the property? However, if the owner of the property isn't willing to move, then what happens? Because there will be other people he'll try to rent to. There'll be others who will go through the same process that we're going through here now with this. At this point, Mr. Castillo's done a great investment already since we started in the whole process of trying to lease the property. We've had to insure that property at the request of the client before he would even consider leasing. So for months, you know, we've been paying insurance on a property that he doesn't even have use of. You know, so that's the position where I stand at. And that's just really where my focus is. I know that a business cannot operate with, you know, a lot of expenses and not getting anywhere from the very beginning. So I think that he'll be an asset to Blue Island. Mr. Castillo has been a client of mine now for 8 years. He is a mechanic that the level of business he has is very fluent, and I see a lot of repeat customers with coming in with new vehicles or vehicles that weren't, you know, the same vehicles from the period before. And so the community is already embracing him. It's just a matter of, you know, providing that faster, quicker service. As far as the alley entranceway, and I wanted to say something about that with me being a woman, I would not like to enter into an auto repair shop from the alleyway because it's all, as a woman, I would already kind of feel unsafe or just not comfortable. Most women don't take cars, but traditionally to auto repair shops. Now you have women that are doing it. And so if you're greeted by a receptionist or a clerk or someone up front when you're bringing that vehicle in, it kind of puts you in a different mindset. So I've been up there. I took a look around from the outside. I've had an opportunity to speak with all the guys and visualize, you know, what type of activity would go on. And I do think that it'll be an asset to the community because it'll allow someone to have a quick service done while they're down the street at the grocery store, across the street at the clinic, you know, just on Western Avenue shopping and saying, hey, I can drop my car here while I go run this errand and come back and get it. And that's the type of service I'm trying to provide.
Yeah, if I might, I agree. I appreciate those comments. You know, you bring an interesting insight relative to the, you know, entrance and so forth. And I guess I just want to revisit one more area. And again, for me, I no doubt this would be a successful business for Mr. Castillo, but like any business, it's going to take money. It's going to take time to build it up, and you need every nickel that you can to do that first. If you've got a property owner that owns property that I mean, let's use that guardrail on the outside of the building, right? To me, if that is a violation currently, and it sure is an eyesore, if not a safety violation, it's clearly a responsibility of a property owner to have that repaired. And it's unfortunate that, it's been able to be in disrepair to that point. So, maybe one of the next steps is to have the property owner participate in a meeting. And let's kind of, talk at it from that perspective, because it is, I believe, in the best interest of Blue Island to be able to support a business such as Mr. Castillo's and not burden him to get the business off the ground.
This is
Sam,
Sam.
you've been quiet. What are your comments?
Mine is, and I understand what's going on too about helping Mr. Castillo, et cetera, to get his business off the ground. I think everybody wants to do that, especially as we're coming out of this pandemic and starting to move forward. But I do think that maybe a cost benefit analysis should be discussed between the owner and the tenant to just kind of resolve any outlying or any unresolved issue that they may mitigate in the future. I think it's got to happen at a point in time. But that might be something if they can get together quickly without belaboring the issue, that maybe we can come back all together with the issues that are possibly outstanding. And they come and say, well, here's what we discussed, and here's what the resolution will be to some of the questions, for example, parking, et cetera. If there's an issue of what to do with hazardous material, batteries, if that's the case, or something of that nature. And then from there, I think they would develop a plan that would work, hopefully on an economical basis, so that we can make a decision based upon what they come up with.
So what is your recommendation then?
My recommendation is that they get together, discuss some of the issues, questions, concerns that we brought up, and then come back together and say, okay, after they dialogue and say, you know what, here's what we brought, here's how we're going to handle, or the possibility of how we would handle parking, et cetera, and then come back to us so that we could have a more clear understanding going forward of how it may be resolved.
Okay. Michael, do you have any thoughts or comments?
No, I think I agree with Sam here that, there's a lot of unknowns right now, that it's difficult to vote on this because there's so many obstacles that are unknown, whether it be a guardrail, whether it be a trash dumpster, whether it be fencing, whether it be lighting, parking. And it just seems like there's so many unknowns right now that it's hard to continue forward with this without answering some of those questions.
Okay.
And once again, I'm gonna go one more time with this, because at some point in time, if this is going to be a like business continue down the line anyhow, and I can only wish Mr. Castillo the best, that this will go way beyond my existence on earth, but these issues may be addressed if he says, well, you know what, I may pull out of this or whatever. If a like business wants to come in there, another type of automobile repair shop, the same questions will be out there anyhow. They need to be addressed. They need to be addressed so we can make a decision based upon concrete understanding of how they're going to operate.
Okay. Any other final thoughts? Okay. I would like to recommend to the committee that we continue this discussion. So we postpone making any decisions at this point. We should give some takeaways to Mr. Castillo and to come back to us with a resolution, a plan for how to address some of these issues against which we can make a decision. Is that agreeable to the committee?
Yeah, I highly recommend that. That'd be great.
Okay. But we should give some kind of a line items of the things that we're looking to have resolved, so that when they come back, we can go down the line and say, okay, what are you doing this? How's this working? What is this reasonable to agree to, et cetera, et cetera. So I propose that I put forth a motion that we continue this conversation with a list of parking lot. What would that look like? How would it be addressed? Parking as it relates to the parking lot. So customers coming in, leaving, that parking lot area where the trash dumpster is going to be. Is it in a reasonable location next to the privacy fence? And does that make sense? Again, on the parking lot, but in a paved state. Also, from the signage perspective, what are the signs? Sign was really the decision that we ultimately had to make a decision on, which was what is the proposed solution. The planning committee has requested that, the zoning committee has requested that the front sign be replaced. Discontinued. Is that correct, Howard? But
Yeah,
the sign on the street, is it Oak Street, that does need to be replaced. What does that solution look like? Is that?
Yeah.
If
Okay.
could, if it's not going to too much detail, making it difficult to anyone, if it could be delineated also by, what is the responsibility if it's applicable to Blue Island? What about what's to the owner? What's to the tenant?
So to interject again, if business development grant money is going to be used for signage, then he's going to have to remove that box sign on Oak Street too, because it doesn't comply with today's standards. So
we are asking that box sign be replaced.
Not necessarily. My compromise is we have two signs that are not allowed anymore. The more important one, the one that I feel is more of a problem, is the one on Western Avenue. The one on a side street, it's a box sign, it's not on Western Avenue, I'm fine with it. That's my compromise, I know the Community Development Committee has done compromises in the past to start to get some of these older signs, obsolete signs removed, so they're not putting the hammer down on everyone. So that's the compromise that I have. But if you're going to use public business development grant money, then that sign also has to be removed and a new sign has to be placed on that building. The one on Oak Street.
Okay, so our recommendation then for that would be to replace the sign on.
Replace the sign face, because there's no sign face now.
Sign post.
Sign face, the plastic face.
I'm sorry.
If you look at the photo, the owner took off the face and it has the fluorescent tubes exposed to the elements.
And that is the one that is facing the parking lot.
That's a standard process that a lot of people do to contain their grandfather's sign so they don't lose it. Okay.
Right, but you're asking for the sign face of the sign that is facing the parking lot, correct? Not the one that's on the side street?
Yeah, my concern is to have the one on Western Avenue removed.
Remove, period.
Remove, period. It's obsolete. It's not allowed. You don't
But
have
a new sign proposed for the one that's on the side street, which is where the opening of the cars go in, the garage.
Right. So,
correct?
So that existing sign that's on Western, it's not allowed. It's a wall sign that protrudes outward to get the business to get business on Western Avenue. People seeing it, they know that's a place to go. That's not allowed.
You
anymore.
want that? We're proposing that sign be removed.
Right.
Okay, and then the guardrail. We need a solution, a discussion potentially between the owner of both businesses. Need to address the guardrail. If you could please come back with a resolution on how that guardrail will be fixed, removed, or whatever. That would be the request. Agreeable? Okay. All right. So I continue I put forth a motion to continue this meeting with the four questions and issues at hand that the applicant come back with a resolution on how and potentially when these things would be addressed, either as a business or with the owner or with the neighbor, and so that we can vote on how to move forward with this particular application. Do I have a second? Do I have a first?
May I just add one more thing? Just a suggestion. To the degree that it can be done, I would strongly recommend that the property owner be available when this is brought back, so that if we have discussions, questions on what the resolution is, that we're, not going back again for another round of discussion. I think that would be helpful to everybody.
Okay. I'm kind of in agreement with that. When we were dealing with Ophelia's banquets, we had Mr. Loisman there, who could speak directly to the property. Okay. So I proposed the motion. Do I have someone who is willing to put forth the motion?
I'll
Okay,
make
Ron,
that
you're,
motion.
okay.
Second.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, Ron, you roll call, Ron,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
and Kimberly, aye. Okay, motion approved. Excuse me. That we will continue this meeting. Howard, is there anything else that you want to suggest or recommend?
Yeah, well, my recommendation is that Mr. Castillo should make an appointment with the building official and the fire chief to sit down to go over some of these things that are fire related. So at least from the very beginning what needs to be done, not at the end at the business license application. Oh, I didn't know I have to do this, this, and that. I think that's going to be beneficial because the building official can tell you many things that I can't tell you because I'm zoning, and so does the fire chief. And also, since we're on TV, we're live. The next meeting will be May 6th, so I need to advertise that. May 6th at 7:30 is the continuation of this special use for the auto repair facility.
Okay. Are there any other board concerns or thoughts last minute, quickly? Okay, I move to adjourn the meeting. Roll call. Sam?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And Kimberly, aye. Meeting adjourned at 9:51. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Thank you, Janet.
Well,
All right.
Thank you all.